Christian values. What the hell does that mean? It just means personal values, my personal values. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. What I want to do in this video, and this is kind of a stretch, I'll be honest with you. I'm not one that watches the news, but I've got another YouTube channel that I've been doing all my outdoor adventures on, posting things. And it's set up a little bit differently. And I see a lot of things that come across my homepage that I've got over time. I've got all that stuff shut off on this channel here that I don't see it on my homepage. So news articles and things like that, Fox, all that, I don't want to see any of that stuff. On the other channel, though, I caught something and it just got my attention. It's somewhere in, you can't make this up, Godly, Texas, where, well, you know what? I've got a few minutes of the news article. I've shortened it down to just a couple of minutes here. And it talks about the chief of police and his wife and a couple of other police officers and their family going to this prostitution house and, you know, things that are going on, some extortion. It's very bizarre. And then I want to talk about it a little bit.
The Johnson County District Attorney's Office is investigating a web of allegations. Law enforcement officials engaging in organized criminal activity centered around prostitution. Ashley Ketcherside, a twice convicted prostitute, and her husband Michael Ketcherside, both in jail for racketeering. That's operating an illegal business or scheme to make profit involving coercion, fraud, or extortion. Michael Ketcherside also charged with continuous promotion of prostitution. Former Godly Chief of Police Matthew Cantrell and former Godly police officers Solomon Omatoya and Jeremy Arbuthnot all charged in the prostitution conspiracy. According to court documents, Godly police officers and their spouses would frequently spend time at Ashley and Michael's residence. There are prostitution allegations, and investigators believe police resources were used to compile info on local city and school district officials and private citizens who Ashley and Michael Ketcherside perceived as adversaries. Now, in the middle of this investigation, prosecutors uncovered evidence showing that the former police chief sexually harassed a woman for several years, ranging from driving past her home and shining his police unit spotlight into her windows to calling her into the police department where he would ask her about her divorce, fondle her buttocks, and ask her to sit on his lap. She further describes unnecessary traffic stops conducted by Cantrell as well as other officers. Former Godly police officers spoke with prosecutors confirming they were directed to stop her. Cantrell allegedly told officers she was an informant for him, which she says was not true. Ultimately, the woman says she had sex with Cantrell in 2016 and 2020 in an effort to stop the threats and harassment. He's now charged with 2 counts of sexual assault, as well as engaging in organized criminal activity. But where does Matthew Cantrell's mother, Regina Cantrell, come into the picture? Well, Regina Cantrell worked at the Johnson County Jail, and in the days before investigators raided her son's home, Regina Cantrell allegedly monitored jail records to see if arrest warrants were being issued for her son. She's charged with misuse of official information. Now, we know this prostitution conspiracy investigation is ongoing. It's unclear if more arrests are coming down the pipeline. For now, I'm David Centendry, reporting with Fox 4 News.
All right, I want to caveat what I'm about to say with, I'm going to just be like inventing this up in my mind because there's nothing in here that referenced belief in God or anything like that. But I guarantee from a place in Godly, Texas, well, I'm not going to guarantee. I would say actually better off word it this way, that if you were to ask any of those people that were shown in their mugshots up there, if they were atheist or if they believed in God, I can pretty much, I would be astounded if any of them said that they were an atheist. I would imagine that all of them would say they believed in God and that they went to church and all of that sort of stuff. That's a part of the territory down there. It's a part of their being there. And now you are in Godly, Texas. But what do you have? You have humans that are humans. Religions don't make people. People make religions what they are. And that's exactly what we see here. And again, this is not a religious thing, but what I want to do is point out something that is very egregious, that it appears in Genesis, where there is a behavior at the beginning of the religion that is so atrocious, you have to ask yourself, what the hell are people paying attention to? Let me pull it up here. Here we have it. What I've got up is Genesis, the King James Version, and this is chapter 12. Chapter 1 through 11 is where creation happens all the way down to the destruction of the Tower of Babel, and then a lineage here that is a Terah and Haran lineage. And then chapter 12, bingo, this is where things start. This is where the religion actually begins. This is where Abram, you know the term, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? This is it right here. Abram is the beginning of that lineage. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country. So he's telling him to leave from where you come from and away from your kindred, away from your family, or away from your father's house, and to a land that I will show you. So it's time for you to start out on your own and leave everything behind. And I'll make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I don't need to interpret that. And I will bless them and bless you, and curse them that curse you, and in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. All right, so this is a promise from God that I'm going to bless, take care of things. So Abram departed as the Lord told him to, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So he left. He was 75 years old, and he took his wife Sarai, and Lot his brother's son, and all their stuff that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, into the place of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. So really what's happening, God told him to leave your land, so he did leave his land. And as he did, he took Lot and his wife with him, and all of their stuff, and they're traveling along, and they went into Canaan, and the Canaanites are there. And Abram passed through the land of the place of Shechem into the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. All right, so there we are. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, unto your seed I will give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord who appeared to him. So the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I'm going to give your family and all of your kin and all of your offspring this land right here. And so Abram built an altar. Then he removed from thence unto a mount east of Bethel. So then he left there and went to a mountain to the east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent. He set up his camp there, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. So he's in the middle. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. So right there, he built a second altar and he called upon the name of the Lord. All right. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. Notice that didn't follow up in any way. He just called upon the name of the Lord. The Lord didn't do anything, though, did he? Didn't come and didn't say anything. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. So what do we have here? He went to Canaan. The Canaanites are there, but there's a famine there, and it's so much so that they have to leave. He called upon the name of the Lord, but the Lord did not respond. And it came to pass, and he came near to Egypt, that he said to Sarai his wife, behold, I know you're a beautiful woman to look upon. Yeah, you're hot stuff. Therefore, it'll come to pass. I know what's going to happen when the Egyptians see you. They're going to say, ooh, this is his wife. And they'll kill me, but they will save you, keep you alive. So, I beg of you, tell them that you're my sister. That way it'll go well for my sake, and my soul shall live because of you. And so when they got there, it came to pass when they did get to Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman and saw that she was very fair. Oh, yeah. And the princes also of Pharaoh saw her. So Pharaoh's princes saw her and commended her before Pharaoh. Hey, Pharaoh, she's a hot woman out there. You might want to check this out. Commended her before Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. All right, so what do we have here? Abram gave up his wife Sarai, pretending to be the sister, and she was taken into Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh was, how happy was he? He treated Abram well for her sake. He gave him sheep, oxen, he-asses, and men servants, and maid servants, and she-asses, and camels. So Abram got goods for his wife. And what happens? The Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. How long do plagues take? And where was God in the beginning? How come he put him in a land of famine to begin with? You don't see holes in this story. Everything goes bad and God's not around. It continues to go bad. God does not show up again until it's time to turn Abram into Abraham. And that's going to be in chapter 17, where he tells him again, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generations, and an everlasting covenant to be a God unto you and to your seed before you. But up here in 5, neither shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. Right there, Abram just became Abraham, the father of the religion, after getting his goods by trading his wife to Pharaoh and getting all of his goods and moving off on his own, with God doing what? Sending plagues to help him out while he leaves on the road with all of his goods and obviously sloppy seconds. How nice does that sound? You know what? It gets on, and Abraham gives up his wife again, offers him up to a king. So we've got something really weird going on here. All right, when you look at values like that, you wonder what people are thinking. Do you remember getting taught that story in Sunday school? No. No, they don't tell you stuff like that. I don't think that they're trying to hide it. I think that they can't explain it. They look at it and go, you know what, don't tell them those stories. Let them figure it out on their own and read it, and you have to just go along. I think, Sunday school teachers are just regurgitating stuff. They don't know. They're just reading the Bible and telling you that's what happened. There's not an interpretation happening. That God disappears for a reason and God returns for a reason. We would see that already as a motif that occurred already in Genesis before we even get to chapter 12. Chapter 4, Cain leaves the presence of the Lord. God is not there at all until it's time to come back and call who? Noah. God returns only after his sons have caused the problem. What do we have down here? God disappears again and doesn't return until it's time to call Abraham. Call Noah, call Abraham. God returns. What did we see from the Babylonians? Apsu created everything. The world goes bad. Apsu gets put underfoot. Apsu disappears, reoccurs when Marduk, the called hero, reestablishes control and destroys Tiamat and the early self. God returns when it's time to turn inward, when it's time to go on the path. So there's a repeating motif happening there that shows that it's mythology if people understand it. But they don't interpret it. They just look at it and go, that happened. And I would say, do you trade your spouse for goods? Apparently, that's not okay in UnGodly Texas. Interesting. Behavior like that is okay in the White House today. It's been everybody that appears on the Epstein files was just pardoned by Trump. Trump appears on the Epstein files. What's going on? What do you think? We're just going to just ignore everything. I forgive all of us for what we did. Let's move on. The thing is, when you examine it long enough, Christianity is not going to self-right. It is really a tribal mechanism that's hooked into the mind of the individual that makes it their own. Humans naturally feel they're right. Whether they are or not doesn't matter. That's an evolutionary process. If you didn't think you're right, you wouldn't do anything. So humans think they are right. They know something, and if they accept it, they believe it's true. Unless they have the brain type that examines and looks at and goes down those rabbit holes and figures it out and questions it. But people that just go, yep, that so-and-so said it, that sounds good to me, I'm there. That's the vast majority of humans, and that's what Christianity does. Except that Christianity offers what? Eternal life without, minimal input. You don't have to really do anything. You just have this belief, bingo, you got eternal life. It's really then a religion that is... It takes on the face of the practitioner. It is less a religion and more an individual way of life. And for some, a behavioral excuse. I get to judge you because, God, yep, I don't have any choice. You gays, you fags, you whatever. Meanwhile, that's not what is truly taught. But you have to interpret these things. The idea that you must leave your father, all that stuff. This is the beginning of life. Start out, you're on your own. You lose control of your inner self. You begin to have cyclical pain as a result as you accumulate these things that you pick up as you go along. The stories are very complex, but they're going to follow a certain pattern. That's us in the story. If you don't get that, you're not going to understand it. It's not just mythology. It's built on a human life template. I kind of glazed over that. Let me add this in editing. The story represents each individual and their higher awareness. God is the higher awareness, the pure self. Abram is your consciousness, and Sarai is the inner self. The other parts become our divided self. They're going to be parts to the story. We had a Cain and an Abel that became divided. Here, we're going to have an Abram and Lot. Okay. When we get into the story, it represents us in our life. So starting out, leaving our father, our mother, our past means you are now leaving your childhood behind. And I'm going to put you in a place, you're going to exist here devoid. There's a famine. You don't know anything. You haven't learned life yet. You're brand new in life. You haven't experienced anything. However, I'm going to give everything off to you, which means all of your things that you're going to judge in life is in your control. All of this right here is yours. And then as I disappear, because you cease living through the higher awareness, you begin living through your physical experiences. Oh, I've had this happen. I've had that happen. I look like this. I'm going to get into that. Pretty soon we shift from living from a higher awareness into living into a very physical self and having experiences and judging those experiences. And the nature of that becomes that big pile of, this is your offspring right here, that all becomes yours. And what happens is that we give up our inner self. That represents we now have stored away things inside of us that are hurt, pain, shame, things that we don't want to talk about. Those are the things that Pharaoh gave us. Pharaoh represents life experience, giving us bad things. In the same way, the serpent represented life experiences, offering up the knowledge of good and evil. You're going to go off and experience and have these experiences that are going to be good and bad. You're going to come off balance in very cryptic verbiage that we don't tend to read that way. All right. As we get back into Abram and Sarai, though, the idea that we give up our inner self, Pharaoh pleased. This is us living our life and having fun and doing things that later on we're going to regret. And then plagues begin to happen, represents the idea that now, as a result of living this life, we're having cyclical pain as a result of it. Now this happens all the time, that happens all the time, and the past, or this first life experience in this story tells you to move on, take your stuff and get out of here. That represents us leaving our early selves behind, but taking all of our experiences and moving on with it. There's other things that happen, but in a nutshell, when we get down to 17, that's when we are the person that becomes self-aware to the point that you awaken and go, oh, I am a product of my memories. I must stop looking outward and turn inward. Bingo. You've just become the called person. You've become Noah, there to destroy the world. You've become Abraham, there to make it through the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's this evil entity that's corrupted that has to be destroyed, and that represents your early self, the mote in the eye, the odd against your brother. The stories work that way. And when you recognize that you are that story, that I am Abram and Sarai in the beginning, and that I start out someplace with my mind is devoid. I'm in a land of famine. So I leave my higher awareness and I go off and explore, and I begin to live through all the family, all the offspring. Those are my judgments. Everything that you judge in your life is going to be given to you up here to have control over. You feel about it the way you feel about it. Every time a transition happens, that's going to happen. You get the opportunity to decide how you feel about what Jesus is going to say simply later is the mote in your eye, or the ought against your brother. Here it's in a complex way. It's all of this, your family and your offspring and everybody that is a result of you. That is your life experiences, the massive memories right there. And we have to get rid of that. Okay, so if you understand the template, you can see what's going on. If not, you're not going to see it, but boy, oh boy. If you don't interpret it, how good does it sound to trade a spouse for goods? And have God protect you by sending plagues. Pharaoh was the good guy. They lied to him. And then when they found it, when the plagues came, Pharaoh's like, you lied to me. Get out of here. Go. Pharaoh sent them, take all the stuff I gave you and get out of here. That doesn't make sense unless you look at it and go, okay, that's a metaphorical idea, that this is your early life experience is telling you to take your hurt inner self and your accumulation of goods that you've had through my experience and leave. Go off on your own. And then you go through the next stages of life. Here, let's make sure we've given this a fair shake. When we get down to chapter 20, Abraham, he's journeying from someplace towards the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and was hanging out in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, remember, this is the same Abram and Sarai. They are now Abraham and Sarah. He said, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. He gave her up again. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, you are but a dead man for the woman which you have taken, for she's a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, will you slay also a righteous nation? Will you kill me for being righteous? And he said, didn't he say to me, she's my sister? And she even herself said, he's my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. So what do we have there? They lied to him again, and he takes her in innocence. And God said to him in a dream, yeah, I know you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore, I prevented you from touching her. So in this case, the union did not take place. And what we're going to find out later, when we get down to 26, this is what we find out. They have had a son named Isaac, and they're gone at this point in time. But here's what we find out about Isaac. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. This is from chapter 26, verse 6 and on, just a little ways. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, oh, she's my sister. For he feared to say she's my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. So in the exact same way Abram gave up Sarai, we have their son Isaac thinking the same thing. I'm afraid they're going to kill me, so because she's pretty. And it came to pass when he'd been there a long time that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. What does that mean? They're like leaning up against the wall out there, smooching away, feeling each other up or something. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety, she is your wife. How come you said she's my sister? And Isaac said to him, because I thought I was going to die for her, so that I didn't die for her. And Abimelech said, what is this you've done to us? One of the people might have lightly have lain with your wife. What does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean? I just felt her up. She didn't, I don't know what the hell. This is interesting ancient verbiage. One of the people might lightly have lain with your wife, and thou should have brought guiltiness upon us. Okay, so somebody, might have done something to your wife. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he that touched this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So he's protected of them. But we have a repeating motif going on, don't we? Why is that happening? That represents us moving on in life. You'll notice when it was Abram and Sarai, the corruption occurred. When it was Abraham and Sarah, the corruption was being set up. However, God interfered with it and prevented it from happening so that Sarah never received additional corruption from Sarai. And when we get down to Isaac, which represents an even further iteration of us, that same thing is happening, except that even before the corruption, before the inner self can be given over, it's stopped. These are not really happening. It represents having life, temptations. These are temptations in life. And at first we give in, then we stop it, and then later on it becomes a non-factor. The story is sequencing in a very telling way. All right, well, that's it. Godly Texas? Godly as far as Abraham, I guess. But what the hell is that? See you in the next video.